Hey, it's Earl, and long time no see. I think it's been about a month since my last video. Just been really busy with work, you know how it is, late stage capitalism and all that. Anyways, I got a pretty fun new set of items for my next project. I did a quick Google search and a YouTube search and I didn't see anything about this, so I figured, why not? I'll do a new one. As always, I'm not sponsored by anyone. Fuck affiliate links, fuck sponsors, fuck all of it. Everything I bought with my own money. So, I've been doing a lot of printing on my Elegoo Giga Storm, Orange Giga Storm? I don't know, worst name ever. Regardless. Works great, but every couple of weeks I end up having to have to re-level the bed, which it's not as bad as people make it out to be, but yeah, it gets old after, you know, the 7th time. So, in a search for a solution, I've stumbled upon a pretty nice kit from a place called Luke's Laboratory. Luke sells an entire kit for the Elegoo Gigastorm, which takes a Chube Hotend, which I believe is their own design. I'm not sure if it's just another company's thing rebadged. I don't know. Regardless, I've looked at the specs. I've looked at some other reviews of people using Chubes on other machines. Looks like a great Hotend. So I bought the package deal. Is about $800 plus shipping and tax. So pretty spendy, but I always figured going into this machine I'd end up wanting to upgrade it anyway, so I'm not too put out by it. I kind of expected to have to do this. So I bought the full package. Now it's a bit of a do-it-yourself kit, and you'll end up having to flash the firmware on your Gigastorm to take advantage of some of these features. So I'm just going to show you what you get in the box. So you get a Bondtech LGX Pro extruder. This thing is a beast. Very cool. You get all the cables to make this kit work. You get this nice powder-coated chassis with, looks like we got riv nuts, and I think this piece is aluminum. It feels too light, or titanium, the side pieces. This is definitely steel. Regardless, you get a little chassis to bolt all this into. I got a little camera on the side that's just to look at it at night. Now, one of the very cool things though with this is you also get this little guy here. Some of you might be familiar with this. It's a beacon. And you get all the brackets and the wiring and all this to make this deal work. I believe this cable is for the beacon as well. Yeah. And Luke makes this cable to be the proper size to fit the Giga, so I don't have to mess with any wiring. Not that I'm really opposed to that, but it's nice regardless. I got a couple, you get a box of bolts, and I got a couple nozzles here. Got some Bondtech brass nozzles, and this one is a Gamma Master 0.6, I guess. Anyways, and then you get the actual Chube itself, made in the US. Nice, love that. Yeah, funny name. Obviously, the best part of this entire kit is actually this. So I guess I'm gonna have to get good now. That's pretty funny. But anyways, here's the actual Chube itself. Looks like a very nice piece of kit. Don't have a lot to say until I've used it. And now Luke has a documentation page on how to install this. Like I said, I haven't really seen anything online about anyone installing this. start to finish or really talk about it that much at all. There's a couple people that have mentioned they have it. So I'm gonna go through the documentation. I'll have some shots of me putting this thing together, and hopefully get it up and running, and I won't have to adjust anything anymore. Now, it's a bit of a do-it-yourself kit, like I mentioned. So this is my stock Giga Hotend, and I will cannibalize this. Very easy to take this off. You just pull the bolts on the back of the bracket off. There's 4 and then 2 on the front. This clamshell pops off, and then you're into your hot end. And then the fan just has 2 bolts on each side here, like this on the blower fan. And you just unclip these 2 pins right here and just pull them off. They're just on these little standoffs here, so you gotta flex them out of the way, and it just comes off like that. I will be using these vents, so I'll take those off. And also we reuse the CAN bus here, so you're gonna want to unplug all of these plugs and then just pop this guy off. Okay, and then you're gonna end up with these, the 2 vents, your CAN bus board, and the 2 blower fans. And that's all you're gonna need from the original hot ends. Okay, so step number 1. In your pile of bolts, you're gonna have 6 of these button heads. They're M3 by 8s. And you're going to grab this bracket here with the thread certs. I think it's aluminum. Regardless, this is what you're gonna mount the actual tube itself to. Now, these are the 6 bolt holes you're gonna be using right here. Now, Luke recommends using some thermal grease on this plate before you bolt it to your plate. I don't have any thermal grease, but I believe I've got phase sheets, the phase changing sheets that you can use on water-cooled computer parts. I believe I have a pad that's the perfect size for this. That's probably even better than grease. So I'll be using that, but if you guys got some grease, I'm sure that's just as fine. Okay, so your first step, you want to take your tube. Now you're gonna have these big fiberglass wrapped white wires. You're gonna have some smaller wires coming out of the top here. You wanna bend those down to where those come out into the same area as these ones, okay? And then we're gonna call that the bottom, right, where your wires are on. We'll call this the top. Now, if this is the top, you're gonna take this plate here, and you see how there's all these holes on the top here, these little threaded holes, and we have none on the bottom here, on this bottom edge, okay? This is gonna be your top, this is the top, this is the bottom, this is the top, this is the bottom. So we're gonna bolt it like this, okay? Make sure you're doing it so that the bolt heads will sit flush in here. We're gonna be using 6 M3 by 8s socket head. And you want to put some thermal grease onto this surface here. I'm going to use a phase shift pad, a Thermal Grizzly phase shift pad for this because I have one. So the instructions didn't call for it, but I'm putting some blue Loctite on the bolts. They didn't seem to be getting too snug since it's aluminum, and I didn't want to, you know, jack them down too bad. So I'm just going to put some blue thread locker in there. But this is how it looks. I sandwiched the TPM pad in there, and then, well, I gotta snip off that end, but I snipped off the other ends, and then after I had sandwiched it, then I took some isopropyl alcohol and some swabs and cleaned out the center hole because I just sandwiched it. Okay. So again, I'm gonna Loctite my bolts just because I like to do that when I'm dealing with aluminum. So you're gonna take your assembled tube with the back plate. This is your main steel plate. Okay, you're gonna wanna slide it, right, because it mounts up on your printer like this. You're gonna slide it through, okay? Wires, you know, on the back, right? So you slide it through like so. Right, like this. Okay. Make sure you bend the wires, you know, so they come up through not you know, nicely. Because the threads are in this piece, which is aluminum. So again, I'd probably recommend Loctiting. There are 4 M3x5 socket heads. Okay, and so you're gonna get those 4 bolts in, you know, right there. And that is your tube assembled on the chassis. So, right, your wires are popping up through there. Don't try to be funny and on the back of your steel bracket, there's a smaller hole here. Don't try to be cute and put your wires through that. That's not how it goes. It actually has a gap for the wires here. So this is how they work. Okay, so for our next move, so in your parts bin, you're gonna have some little brass standoffs, 3 of them. 3 of the same bolts you just used to bolt the other assembly, the M3x5s. Bend your wires this way, okay? Just to give yourself some clearance. So it's gonna be this hole, and this hole. You're gonna have 3 3D printed bushings. Press them over your brass standoffs here. So those are all flush. Now, you are going to also have 3 3D printed washers in here. Luke did say to make sure you definitely use these and nothing else, as you will short out your board if you use metal washers for this step. Now you're gonna take your CAN bus. Okay. Now, this plug here, your white plug, this is a crimped connector on the end, so you're gonna wanna try to, when you bend this, you wanna put the pressure on the wire itself. Okay, like this. And not actually like twist the end. Plug this in now because we won't be able to access it later. But this is the tricky part now. But basically, what you're gonna wanna do is, again, you don't wanna try to bend this end. But we're gonna have to bend these wires here around. Wow, yeah, I do not like this step. This is pretty hard. Okay. I'll pull out this other plug out the bottom. You're gonna end up with a position. Oh. Here. So I'm gonna use my own M3 nylon washers instead of these 3D printed ones. Not that I don't necessarily trust these, but, you know, I don't actually trust them. Who knows? I have no idea what they're made of. Maybe it's nylon, maybe it's not, I don't know. And then, yeah, I think if there was one thing I would change about this design, I do not like these wires. The way these wires are routed for this part at all. Feels okay. I'm just making sure this is right. Okay. I think that's about what you are looking for here for the curve. Again, I like these bolts. And then these wires are kind of stuck into this heat sink here, which I don't love, but again, I think that's the one thing I would change about this design, is this wiring routing. But hopefully it'll be okay. Now that we've got that done, the next step is to plug this black plug, or black wires black plug, into this guy here. once you've gotten this, you're ready to go. You do want to make sure that this fan port just to the right of your I don't even know what the plug's called. I'm blanking. I'm sorry. But this is the fan port here, next to the one we were trying to be careful with. Okay. You want to make sure that's accessible. If not, you probably want to try to move these wires while you still have a chance before we get any deeper. But anyways, that's that part of it. Now, take a pair of calipers. You know, all of us have some little bits, I'm sure. You want to cut it to be 19.5 millimeters. We're going to mount our Bondtech extruder unit to the chassis. You're going to have some 20 millimeter M3 cap heads. You're going to take your tubing, you're going to put it down the center. Okay. Press it in. Now you're going to take your Bondtech unit, like so, tag facing you, in the Bondtech section facing you, obviously. And we're going to stick it in the hole for the PTFE tube. Then you're going to flip it upside down, like this so. Hopefully you can see that. And we're going to insert these bolts into these two holes here. For the next part, you're going to be installing your beacon board, which is this guy. I just had a look through my bolts that came, and I guess Luke missed a couple bolts here. It's not a big deal, but he should probably double check all his bolts in his other orders. I bet I'm not the only person. So you're supposed to use 4 M3x6 cap heads and 2 M3x8 button heads. Now, he said you have to use button heads for the M3x8s or they will interfere with the beacon sensor. So be careful about that, I guess. So I have, a couple bolts from my drones laying around here. So I'll just use some of these guys. So if you were looking at it, where this is the right side, you're gonna have a 3D printed bracket and you want this double slot to be sticking up like that. So these two are gonna be the two we're gonna put on the beacon itself. Now, we've got the M3x6s to install. So you're supposed to bolt these in from the inside, which I can already tell is gonna be a ton of fun here. So like this, and then like this. Okay. I'm worried that if I use Loctite and get it on, I'm not sure what this plastic is. Loctite actually eats a lot of plastics. As I've said, eats a strong word. It makes them brittle. So I've seen this a lot with my drones. So you want to be careful with that. This bolt's brought to you by our sponsor today, Carvana. If you want to be completely screwed on a car today, come on down. Okay. Actually, I think it's an iFlight bolt, so it's sponsored by iFlight, I guess. Let's see where it says this side up. I probably should have read that first, huh? So now we're gonna do our fan ducts. So that you're going to take them, orient them the way that I'm showing them here. And the fans will then be mounted like this and like this in this orientation, the duct coming off the left, etc. I'll get a good shot of the orientation for you guys. Okay. Now, again, these are the bolts that come with it, okay? I poured the bag directly in here, so I'm not just losing bolts, but, so Luke says there's M3 by 20 millimeter bolts to use for these, right? That'll go through here, 4 of them. There's only 3 of them. So again, Luke, you probably want to check your bolt counts again. I definitely have some M3 by 20s for my drones, so I'll grab one of those. And again, since it's mounting plastic, I'm not going to use Loctite on these ones. See? Oh, okay, just snug them up. They don't got to be super tight. And then get your ducts. I'm not sure if this is an oversight in the design on this, but these bolts are definitely not gonna work here. Kind of feel like I'm a beta tester now at this point with the bolts. These are M2 by 3s, I believe, and these are definitely too small, so I mean, I'm not trying to be an ass or anything, but when you spend this much money on a kit, it'd be nice if you actually had the bolts for it, I guess. So, I would recommend that Luke check his bolts. Okay, that looks great. So yeah, I'll put that in my description to grab some M2 by 5s, and well, it's hard for me to know with the other ones whether I just got a missorted kit or if I should recommend people get some spares if they don't have them. But I will say for this part, since he recommended using the original bolt Phillips, that's not gonna work because those aren't even close to the right size. Not even close. This is much better. All right, we're gonna play a fun little game. Let's see if we got them. So we need 4 M3 by 8s. If it's not obvious to you guys, I can't imagine there's too many novices building something like this, but who knows? It's kind of an interesting printer that probably some novices actually did buy. You want your blowers to go parallel to your nozzle, so it's pretty easy to line them up. In the documentation, he was using the cap heads for this, of the same size. I just like button heads more. We're gonna run this one to here. Okay, like that. And you just want to make sure you don't put the wires behind the steel plate because this is going to be mounted flush with our printer eventually. So, which is important for what I'm about to show you here. So this fan header is going to go to this one, or plug is going to go to that header. And again, we can't just be like this. We got to run it behind the steel bracket or it'll interfere with the mounting. So you can just snake it in like here. Like so. And get it in with my tweezers. There we go. Okay, this must be my Bondtech cable. I must have gotten it mixed up. Alright, so this goes in here, and this goes to the port labeled extruder motor. Try to do it without bending this wire too badly. I guess that's okay. And then we got to do the beacon wire still, which this guy is going to plug into your beacon. And so the deal with this is you're going to have to run this along your tool chain. And this is the tool head back assembled on the printer. I haven't run the wiring yet. And the small bolts, if you don't remember and it's been a while, the small original bolts are on the top of the front, and the larger ones are, let's see if I can see this, they're on the bottom, I guess here. So that's what it looks like, and then you can plug it in. And now, for probably the most time-consuming part of this is running the cable for the beacon sensor. Yeah, so with this chain, I guess you just take a little screwdriver, and it actually has a screwdriver symbol, believe it or not, on one end here. And you're gonna pry it up and go all the way down and run this guy all the way down. So I got the first part of the chain done, routed it through here, and it probably only took me 20 minutes to do it through here. It's not too bad once you get the rhythm going. I think doing 3 of the tabs at a time is probably the quickest when you're doing this. So, and I have taken off this, you're gonna need to remove this panel here. And to access this, there's about 8 bolts. You gotta take off this corner piece and the back corner piece, and also you will need to unplug these plugs here. So make a note of the order you have these plugged in. They are labeled, but maybe you've taken the tags off, I have no idea. So you'll have to pop these off and then replug them in to test it out. And then once everything is working, I'd probably put the panel back on, because you've got some fans here, and the air moving around might mess up your prints. So when you get to the third chain, you're gonna be on this bracket here, and you're eventually gonna have to take this bracket off to be able to get down into these ones. I think to start to finish, this will take you about an hour to get your chain on. Okay, after you get those wired in, I'd probably recommend running some zip tie cables so that the cable doesn't interfere when you're moving up and down on your axes. Then we're gonna boot up the machine, and you're going to want to grab your IP here and take a note of this, because we're gonna need this for the software side of things. And now we need to enable root access. So settings, advanced settings, root. Yes. Accept the risk, confirm. And this will enable rooting. Now, after this is done, you're gonna wanna go to your desktop that you use to send the prints from, I'm assuming probably Orca Slicer for this guy. And you're gonna need an SSH client like Putty. And, okay. So it's finished rooting here. So Giga 3DP, okay. All right, so that's set up. So I'll have a link to the documentation from Luke's software section wiki. It's a little old, so I'm not sure if this is the absolute best software to be using for this, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna give it a go and see how it works for me. I have spent actually weeks trying to make this tool head work. I think I have finally got everything ironed out. I will put my settings in the description for you to download, probably just a link to my Google Drive, because YouTube keeps editing my descriptions for some reason. I've figured out a lot of things with this, so I'm doing I just clicked print right now, and I'm doing a calibration cube test. And so what happens here is it's doing the auto Z. It checks, I think, twice for it to automatically set your Z offset, which is very cool, using the beacon. It does that a couple times, and then it will do an auto bed mesh. Again, I will have the settings, like if you copy my setup, unless you have maybe a newer version of this printer and the hardware is different, maybe you have to change some of your pins, but I think all your settings will be all right and you'll be good to go. But anyway, so I believe that it set the Z height there, and now I believe it is going to turn, yeah, okay, because I got my screen here, so I can see it's setting all of the 4 corners to 60 Celsius. Now, one thing you will have to edit, I'm using the 800 by 800 millimeter Tronxy bed. You might need to change your bed stuff. If you have like the 840 millimeter one plate, single plate, or if you are just using your quad plates. But other than that, all of my settings will work for you out of the box, I believe, to the best of my knowledge. Obviously, keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't ram anything, but I spent a lot of time here, and I think that it's functioning. It took a lot of time to figure out the part cooling fan pins. That was actually pretty hellish. And the LGX here, I had a heat break jam, which if you've ever done heat break jams, that's not fun. So I've reassembled this a few times, taken it apart, reassembled it. Long process. I bet I've spent 60 or 70 hours troubleshooting this tool head. The documentation from Luke's is not that great. He missed a lot of things. I think some of his settings are actually wrong. I'm sure he didn't do it on purpose, but I don't think he tested it nearly as much as he probably should have. Now we're doing the bed scanning. I have it set up to do adaptive, but if for some reason if your G-code is not set up for object, I think it's called exclude object. If for some reason your setup is not configured correctly for that from your slicer side of things, it will just default to your default bed scanning, which, as you can see, works fine. This is just I don't have the adaptive set in my slicer right now, so this is just, it'll default to this, and this works pretty good. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes to do, and it'll be good for your session. And I believe that it actually compensates as the print goes. So if you have like a really tall print, like say you're printing up here, it actually is changing, supposedly, it changes some of your settings as you go. So obviously I haven't printed anything that's very tall yet with this setup, so I'll let you know in a couple of weeks how that goes, I guess. I'll probably have a follow-up video. But since I've been struggling so much, I'm sure that people out there will appreciate this if they've managed to buy one of these tool heads, or maybe you just have another tool head with the beacon setup. It's a cool device, but what a pain in the ass. The documentation is really light. I really struggled setting this up. So hopefully this helps you. Best of luck. So upon the startup sequence, it puts a lot of very it's like it's dripping from the nozzle, or maybe it's trying to do like a calibration line, but it under extrudes, so you end up with all this like little little spider silk plastic all over the bed plate over here. I haven't figured exactly what's going on with that. that could be more of my slicer settings than the actual print head's fault. So I'll maybe mess with my retraction settings. I think I'm just using some very generic PLA profile right now, just to see if it works. So once I play with that, maybe I'll have some PLA, PETG. I'm probably eventually gonna do some carbon nylons once I finish my enclosure for this guy. Some polyamides. So I'll probably eventually have some setting videos, but don't get your hopes up for a timely turnaround. It's a lot of trial and error on a printer this large. I started this video 2.5–3 months ago, something like that. And if you're seeing this, it's about to be Thanksgiving. I started this about three months ago, so it's a lot of troubleshooting. I filmed a lot of talking points that I'm just gonna cut from this video, and instead I'm just gonna have the final result because you guys don't need that process. So I'm gonna make it look easy in this video because I'm gonna try to make this like a 10 or 15 minute video, but trust me, I have like 20 hours of footage that I just chopped. So I'm just gonna give you the final result. Here's the bottom. It's pretty good. One of the sides, pretty good. I mean, I gotta say, for just YOLOing these prints, that's a pretty fucking good Y. I mean, I've printed worse than that on a Bamboo. There's the X. Again, I've printed worse than that on a Bamboo. Look at those overhangs. Those are amazing. I don't know if this camera can pick it up, but those are really good overhangs. My first layer, I think, might need a little work on the first layer, but and the top layer maybe is a little, maybe we're under extruding overall. And I definitely need to work on my, I think my pressure advance, I think I have pressure advanced on, and I think it's just a random value. So this is a great cube for just sticking some settings in. I will have a video on how to set up the Luke Slab thermal. No, it's not thermal. It's just like a really high ISO camera so that you can see at night without any lights. I'll have a video on how to set that up as well, but I'm gonna do that at a later point because I just want to get this video out to you guys. I know that there's probably some people out there who were just as frustrated as I was and just had it either half assembled or it was on their printer and they just couldn't figure out the software side of things. So I'm just gonna get this out there because if I can help one person avoid what I had to go through, then that's worth it for me. So anyways, this video is brought to you by no one. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone.